Thank you very much, and I'll let you pick up from
Just
there.
glad to do it, glad to do it. Appreciate everybody coming tonight. What we're gonna be doing tonight is, and here again, for those that are in the club, you know how much I think and talk about Beads of Courage. Love the program. For anybody who wants to get any information on it, see myself, Kevin's involved in it big time, Steve's involved in it big time, you know, and it's for the Children's Hospital. And that's what this one was actually made for. And of course, I've got the Beads of Courage beads in it. But by the same token, I've done this same thing and sold a ton of them through craft shows without a bead on top, something similar to, you know, what Steve was just showing. But my work is not anywhere close to his, so not going to even try to go there. But here again, it's not something that has to be done for Beads of Courage. I kind of call them Beads of Courage boxes, because that's what I make the most of them of. But I've probably sold 30 or 40 of these things. They can be, people use them for cookie jars, candy jars, flour for the kitchen, for canisters. So, I mean, they can be used for most anything. And so that's what we're going to talk about, is making one. And it's just basically, you know, just a canister, just a canister box. And we're going to be talking about this one itself is actually made out of poplar. In fact, I've got this one. I've got 3 more back here that are in process, and so I can show the whole thing. We're going to kind of do it in segments, and I'm going to swap from piece to piece to piece so you can see the whole process, you know, in tonight. But all 4 of these have poplar. I went over to Peach State Lumber over in Kennesaw, bought a 8/4, 6 1/4 inch wide, 9 foot long piece of poplar, $21 and some change. So these things cost about $5 a piece to make, you know, and you can't beat it. They turn out nice. This one especially turned out very good because of the heartwood and sapwood. When here again, we're talking, you know, 9 foot piece of wood, 6 inch wide. When I cut it out and then started looking at, okay, when I cut my squares and started making my circles, I started laying it out. And as it turned out, I wound up with a pretty decent pattern, because that's actually 3 individual pieces of wood and the 4th piece for the top. And that's what we're going to talk about, is how you can do this and put it together. Somewhat it is segmented, but you haven't got 100 segments that you're gluing together. You're gluing 3 pieces together, you know, to make what the bowl itself is. So that's what we're going for tonight. That's what we're going to be looking at. And we start off with 4 pieces of lumber. What I did, just to make it easier, I've made these things using, you know, a solid log. And what I have found, my luck on waiting on that stuff to dry and not crack, they come out of the box as 2 halves, because they tend to break apart. Well, this way you don't have to worry about that. And you can just take 4 solid pieces, glue them together, and go to work and turn it, or 3 pieces and go together. Well, I figured that's wasting a lot of wood. So the top 2 pieces of the wood, I went ahead and just cut the circle with my scroll saw. Saved me a little bit of lathe turning, saved a little bit of wood, and in turn, I get little bowls out of the center sections that I cut. You know, these at craft shows, I get $5 a piece. So I just paid for 3 Beads of Courage boxes just with the centers. You know, so it turns out pretty good on these. I did a little embellishment on it. But like I say, it's just plain poplar. If y'all want to pass any of those around, that's really not part of the demo. It's just kind of a side piece that you wind up with, you know, as you do it. So what we're going to do is start off how I would start piece 1 of the box and work our way through it. So that's the bottom. That's what I want. So here's my bottom piece, and what we're going to start off with is getting it on the lathe and going ahead and starting it, and I'm just going to kind of walk up through the process itself. Now, you can do this a couple different ways. you can put your regular drive center in and turn it just like you're turning in between centers. But because we're not going to be putting a whole lot of pressure and strain on it, I'm not even gonna use that. I've got my center marked. So I've got the center of the bowl, get a little piece of tape off there. And I'm just gonna use my chuck almost like a band, like a. And like we would do on anything else, we're gonna start off by just rounding it off a little bit. I'm just gonna slowly work away at it, remembering your anchor your tool, rub your bevel, and then slowly raise your tool till you get to your cut. Getting close to around there. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna back my tool rest up a little bit, or back my tailstock up, give me a little more room to work. And I'm gonna go ahead and put a mortise in the backside. And for those that are just learning, I have found if you'll make yourself a simple tool, that's the diameter. I want a tenon, if I'm using a tenon to fit my jaws, that's the mortise diameter that I want. So it just gives me a quick way where I can just quickly mark and get an idea of about where I want my tenon, or mortise in this case, because we're going to use a mortise. And I use this mortise tool. I bought it years ago when I first started, probably 6-7 years ago, made by Technitool. There's a lot of people that are making them. Mike Peace has got a good video on how to make one of these tools from another old piece. But you want to be just above center because we're going to be basically scraping here. And I'm just going to go in there with my tool. And I've now made my mortise for my chuck to fit. I'm going to go ahead and increase this one. And the reason for it, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger.
How about your depth, Bill?
Depth on one, usually you want to go about 1/8 of an inch. Sometimes you can go a little bit less, depending on what size you're dealing with. On this one, I wasn't worried so much about the depth, and you'll see in a minute, because this is going to actually be the bottom of my box. So this is the one I will probably pay a little more attention. We're going to hollow out a lot of that anyway, so all I was really doing is trying to get the size for my mortise, for my jaws. I just want to take a quick pass across and just kind of smooth this out a little bit. And now I'm going to actually make the mortise that I will be using on the bottom of the box itself. So I want to pay a little bit closer attention to where I'm going here. Before I stab myself, take my center out of there. You don't know how many times you wind up banging your elbow or your arm on that, and you start leaking this red stuff out, so you have to stop and kind of clean up a little bit. This tool already has your bevel angle, so if your jaws themselves have the bevel on it, it's already got your angle made for you. And you're using it basically like a scraper.
Right there. Perfect. Thank you.
And then since I know this is going to be my finished bottom, I'm going to go ahead and work at it to really kind of get this looking the way I want it to look when we're done. Now what you're going to want to do, once you get to this point, this bottom is flat, it's pretty much going to be done. So if I was going to go ahead and finish this up tonight, if I was actually working on putting one completely together, I can go ahead and sand this and be done with it. Therefore, when I get through, I don't have to worry with the bottom, it's already cleaned up and done. Since this one's still in pieces and I'm gonna wind up gluing it up when I get back to the house, we're not gonna spend the time to do that now, to do all that. But at this point, I would go ahead and sand that bottom, get it finished up exactly like it's gonna ultimately be. Now, I wanna turn around and start working on the rest of it. The other thing I have found, and this is just something personally that I do, once I get a bottom cut and I know that I'm done with this, and I know there's a good chance I'm gonna be taking this on and off the chuck to be doing other things with it, I will always take a pencil, and as you can see on my jaws, on my chuck, I've painted one of the locks red. Everybody see that? So what I'm gonna do is take me a pencil and put me a pencil mark right there on the jaw. In fact, here's one that we're partially done with. You can see my pencil mark, so I know when I put this back in the jaw, I'm gonna put it back at this point. Therefore, I'm gonna be running pretty true when I'm taking it off and putting it back on. So now that I've done that, we're ready to go ahead, and I know I'm going to be getting rid of, since this is a beads of courage, minimum inside diameter for a beads of courage box is about 5 inches. Minimum 5-inch deep, 5-inch diameter. They'd really like to have 6 and 6, but since this wood started off at 6, I can't do a 6-inch diameter. Okay, so I can go ahead and get rid of some of this, because to get rid of, you know, we're looking at 4 inches here. I need to get another inch of depth out of this. Make sense? So I'm going to go ahead and kind of decide about where I want to go. We're looking at 6 inches because I want to leave enough to give me some good glue surface when I'm gluing up. I'm going to cut this out at about 1 inch. So I can go ahead and hollow this portion out to go ahead and get down about 1 inch down to be able to give me the depth that I will have. And then I have my real high-tech depth gauge here. And I know I want to go about an inch deep. So I'm just going to set this at about 1 inch. And then I can judge and see how much further I need to go as I'm going in. If I go a little further than an inch, it's all good. As long as we don't go all the way down to the point where we're getting into our mortise, we got to remember it's running roughly right in that neighborhood of about my 1/8 inch or so. I'm safe till I go to there. So now we're getting close. Still got a little bit further we can go. Not used to this double clicking on this. I think everybody that's come up to do a demo has said that, right? I didn't want to be the odd one out, not under that. And so we're almost there. And also, the other thing that, here again, when I started doing these, was very intimidating, going down 5 inches deep. So I go ahead, I know when I'm getting a little close, I'm gonna go ahead and switch out. I'm gonna work with my other tool. I'm gonna work to really smooth this bottom up. So when I get finished, most of this bottom is gonna be done. I'm not gonna have to do any bottom work other than a little bit of a scraper at the end of it. Okay, the rest of it will be done. I'll still have to pull some of this side off, but I won't have to be working real deep on the bottom itself. So I'm going to come in here and work real slow and easy. You can even get your scraper if you want to go ahead and get a scraper out.
Are you using the negative, right scraper or just a?
This is just a standard scraper. I've got a big negative rate scraper, but it's almost too big for that. What I have done, as I've sharpened this, you can't hardly tell it, but when I use my hone to sharpen it, I'm sharpening on the top going down, which is putting somewhat of a little bit of a negative rake on it. But at this point, I've got it basically down where it needs to be. I'm down to my 1 inch mark. I can really go in and spend a lot of time really working real soft with the scraper. I can even go on and sand this. So when I glue everything up, the very bottom, the center part of the bottom is done. All I'm gonna have is just this little outside edge to deal with. Make sense? Okay. The other thing you want to do is make sure that this surface is perfectly flat. You don't have a taper in or out or anything. So what I have found, here again, a lot of different ways to do it. I now have a drum sander, so I will take this back off. I will run it through the drum sander or do it before I started. Is go ahead and sand it flat. And I've got a sanding board. Nothing but a piece of MDF with got 120 on this side, 8 grit on this side. I would put me a little pencil mark on here. I don't want to do a lot of sanding in here since the food services, we don't want to create a lot of dust. But basically what I'm going to do is take my sanding board and I'm going to keep sanding until all my pencil marks gone. Then I know I'm perfectly flat. So I know when I put my next piece on, we've got a good surface there. And for this, for now, we're done with it. At least at this point in time. I would go to my other rings, and once again, I'm not gonna take the complete time to do it all. But what I do here again, if you've got a drum sander or whatever, but what I'll do is use my coal jaws and basically put this chuck on the lathe, take this one off. Guess I should go ahead and do that.
That's an index or the spindle locks over there.
And at this point, I would here again, take my coal jaws, lock this in a coal jaw, turn it on, fan it flat. Therefore, this piece, this is gonna match up perfect. Flip this over, sand the other side flat, so I know both sides are flat, and I will go ahead and do my third ring, my top ring the same way. If that makes sense on how to flatten those, kind of with the cheap, easy way without having to, go get the drum sander and all. For those that don't have one. Then when it comes time to, when I get all my pieces flat, now I'm ready to glue up. And once again, I'm gonna I do my glue ups the last thing in the evening. When I'm done in the shop for the day, now's the time I'm gonna do my glue up, because I can let it sit overnight to dry. So I'm gonna put my bottom piece back in. Index it back where it was. This cannot be used when you're actually turning because there is no bearing in it, okay? All it's gonna do is hold my chuck. And I think you can kind of get to the idea as to where I'm headed now, right? I've got my flattened ring number 2 that I'm gonna put on here. I'm gonna lock it in. Glue, and here's my press. I'll let it sit for about 30, 45 minutes. Typically go upstairs, maybe eat some dinner, and then come back downstairs, back this off, set my next ring on it, glue, press, let it sit overnight. And I use Type Bond 2 unless I know I'm gonna be selling it to somebody that may be having some moisture around it or something, and then I'd go with the Type Bond 3. But that's personal preference. Make sense? And the next morning I come back and I've got this. What you can even do if you're, and here again, I was, so I'm not going to tell no lies. I was kind of timid about wanting to go in here, at this point in time. So what I have used to do, I'd glue this ring on, let it set overnight, come down, turn the inside of that ring till I got it down where it needed to be. Then that night added this ring. Next day, I turned the top ring and finished the bowl with it. So it kind of takes some of that, fear factor out of it, if you will. In going that deep for those that are just starting, makes it a little bit easier. You're not going as deep, and it just makes it a little bit easier. Questions on any of that? Where we're at so far? So, since we do have that done, we are glued up about like we would be at this point in time on the following day. Using my index mark again. Now we're ready to turn this. This back out of the way because we're done with that. And I would always turn this inside first. You want to leave as much meat on it as you can to cut down on your vibration. Outside is the last thing you want to turn. So you want to work on the inside. And I'm going to use just my traditional bowl gouge. And when we're turning on this, I'm going to be actually turning from this side. Okay? Once I start my cut, I'm not watching my cut here. I want to watch my cut line on this side of the bowl and watch it as it's going down. As you can see, this one's still got a little warp in it, a little wobble on it because the outside hadn't been trued up or anything. We could go ahead, if we wanted to, true this a little bit. In fact, it probably wouldn't hurt. I didn't realize this one was going to be quite that bad. Not really going to try to go real true. I just want to get close. Just so we can kind of cut down on the wobble. Once again, while I'm cutting, I'm not watching necessarily where my tool is. I'm watching this side, watching my horizon, watching my cut go across. That way you can keep your cut going pretty straight. Took a lot of vibration for this outside edge. That's why I did want to do this. But it's far enough off, I felt like I didn't get a little bit of it out of there anyway. Now let's go back to the inside. And these little LED lights, Woodturners Wonders, work fantastic to let you see the inside because it's set right there and I can get a good shot. I don't know if on the inside you can see it there. And as far as your speed goes on this, whatever you feel comfortable with, some people are going to feel better at 600 or 700, particularly when you're first getting started, maybe even 300 or 400, and then as you get more comfortable, you'll start picking up your speeds a little better. You actually get a better cut the faster you go, but you don't want to be so fast that you're scared of it, And trust me, I was scared of it. Okay, so we're going to just slowly kind of work away at this. And remember, I'm looking at the right side of the bowl, watching where my cut line. I don't know if you can really see it in the with the camera. And I'm just slowly working my way down. Letting the tool kind of just carry and let the wood tell me what it wants. Not really trying to take a real deep cut. And remember that inside, once I get to this piece, part of it's already gone away. So I've got a hollow spot between this outer and inner. So it's gonna, when we get into that, we'll kind of fall out. I'll get rid of the wood. Can y'all see that top line in the camera was as I'm going in?
Sit on the bottom.
Yeah, there's nowhere that we can position the camera that you can see the other side.
Well, you can
His
see on
arms
the bottom a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he's talking about on
Yeah,
the
the
side.
side.
But yeah, we can see the cut line in the very bottom.
Okay. I'm almost down to where that cut that I did on just the single bottom piece, I'm just about to it now. And now I'm actually cutting on that third piece in there. And what I'm gonna do on that, and I don't know if I can describe it, I might need to. As I'm going down, when I get down close to the bottom, I'm not going all the way to the dead bottom. I'm almost gonna go down and have a little step. You follow what I'm saying? Because if you're going straight down and you hit the bottom of the bowl, you just got a huge catch. So I want to stop about somewhere quarter inch, whatever you feel comfortable with. I typically go 3/16. I've never measured it, but I stop just before I get to the very bottom. I'll clean that up when I get done. Okay, I can go in there with my scraper and I'll show you how to go in with the scraper and take care of that once you get there. Does everybody follow where I'm going? And I know when I get to that point, I'm at a 4 inch because that's what I measured and said I was cutting out to. So I got another ½ inch to get out of there or thereabouts to get to my 5 inch diameter. So we'll probably make about 4 more, maybe 5 more passes to get close to that 5 inch. I found a lot of times if you draw your tool back, make sure you're on the bevel backside of the tool, you can pull some of your trash out of there as you're going, so you don't stop and have to clean up too much. And just so we can see about where we're at. Right. We're right at 4.5 inches at this point in time. So we still got a little bit more to go. You can also use these calipers and you can tell where you've got your high and low spots by where you're dragging and where you hit into an open area. A little more open up here at the top than we are at the bottom, so I've got a little bit of taper going in. But out here at the top, we are now sitting right at 4 3/4. So we'll take just a little bit more. I'm going to go a little deeper at the bottom. And we're going to get a little bit closer to that 5-inch mark, and then we'll go to using the scraper to square it up and take care of it from there. Lost my egg. You have to remember when you're cutting, what you're taking off one side, you're taking off the other. So you think I got to take a 1/4 inch. You don't want to take a 1/4 inch, you want to take an 1/8 because you're going to get your quarter that way. Okay, that's about where we're at. Yeah, I'm still got a little bit of a taper down towards the bottom. I need to clean the bottom up a little bit, but I think we're about there at the top. And we're about 1/8 of an inch or so away from our 5-inch mark out here. So I got a little taper towards the bottom. So what I'm going to do now is go to using the scraper itself. And when I'm using a scraper down inside a bowl, I'm going to use a flat tool wrist. This one I have found, and of course it was suggested to me by somebody pretty close to me over here, is a robust, probably the longest one you're going to find. A lot of them you'll find are only about this long, where when you're going down in the bowl, you're only getting about this far with your support. So you're working without support the other end. So this is about the longest one you get. And when you're scraping, you want to be at or above center. If you go below center with the scraper, you're very apt to get a catch. So you want to stay center or above when you're scraping. So I know where my center is back there. I'm kind of eyeballing it. And I'm going to use a box scraper. Got a cutting edge, on the front edge
Hold it over
as
the,
well as the side.
over the workpiece. And then there you go.
So you've got a cutting edge here and a cutting edge here, and that helps you when you're on the inside, flattening that out. And this is the edge that I'm going to use to get a little bit of that ridge that I've got on the inside. Make sense? Okay, and eyeball myself and go up just a little bit more.
Are you also using your rest to sort of judge how flat you are?
How flat I am, because I know I'm good and flat right there. I keep my tool flat, or I can tilt it a little to get a little negative rake on it. But you want to keep that edge down flat on the tool rest, because it's going to keep your tool flat and you're not getting high or low. Good thing. Thank you, sir. Okay, so let's go in here, and first thing I'm going to do is clean up a little bit of that bottom and get rid of some of my ridge. Get my light back up here where I can see it, y'all can see it. You can probably see that ridge in the back pretty easy now. So that's what I'm going to try to get rid of, and I'm going to start by using this top. And I'm just going to go in on it just a little bit at a time until I kind of shave that thing down a little bit so it's not quite as big. Sorry if my head's getting in the way, but I do need to see what I'm doing here. Once I get it shaved down pretty close, now I'm going to go to the bottom and then come back out to the outside, so I've got a good flat bottom in there. Once I get to my outside edge, now I'm going to come back with it. And that's going to help square me up. It's going to take away any of the little valleys that may be in there. Still got a little bit of that.
We were able to see it go away.
So at this point, basically all we lack in here is sanding. And it's time to go sanding. Couple different things here again, not gonna do a lot of sanding in here because of the food services and all. We don't want to create a big issue and get ourselves kicked out of here. Couple different options you've got. You can use something similar to these. This one is actually from Woodturners Wonders, and it's a roll-lock, and the extension fits in your drill, so you can use just a standard drill. Got Velcro. This one is one I use with 320 paper. I've got a whole
Got the workpiece.
got a whole set of these, and I've marked them starting at 120, 150, 180. Therefore, I can put one piece of sandpaper on here, and I'm not pulling it off every time I change grits. Cost you a few bucks. I think these are like $3 or $4 a piece. You know, so I've got one for the various sizes, and I'm going to use that on my drill and go in. If you've got a drill for the bottom's probably about the toughest. Then your inertia sanders. And with this, the wheel turns, and just kind of quick judgment here. You're just going to go in. Want to be at a pretty slow speed for this. You don't want to be going too fast because of control. You just get that on the bottom, and they are aggravating as the devil sometimes for the very bottom. And I admit it, and that's why I've gone to the drill. This was my first purchase because it was cheaper, and now I've gone to the drill, but it'll run across that bottom, and you can just let it work across the bottom and smooth it up. This you can also turn to do your sides as well as On the Woodturners Wonders, they've got, where'd it go?
They actually sell a better version of the one that you just had up there. It doesn't have the knobs. They put alum socket in there so that there's no knobs going out.
And I brought it just to show everybody, and I don't sell them, so I don't make any money on it. But I saw it and thought, you know what? I'm gonna give it a shot, but I can use it for other things. This is a new Rikon sander that they have come out with. And it's battery operated. And it's got a screw-on head. Once again, it comes with one head. Once I used it, I thought, I like that. Went online to Rikon, ordered more heads so I could have each one labeled. The only thing it's aggravating, the on-off button is recessed. So you almost have to use your fingernail and hold it till you see the little light come on. Come on, light, there it is. Can't use it on the very bottom, but it's fantastic on the side. And here again, I'm gonna land away, and then I'm gonna go back to my outside when I get ready, and I can sand the outside with it and all. The other tip for those that weren't here, when Peggy Schmidt did one of her first demos, she talked about it, and I immediately thought, I'm gonna invest $6 and find out. Magic eraser, okay? Go to Walmart, go back to the kitchen stuff. Instead of the magic eraser, get their house brand. You get 12 of these for $6, which my sandpaper is not messed up too bad. Great for cleaning your sandpaper. Sandpaper lasts so much longer. And that's one I have been using for probably 3 months. Probably made, let's see, I've made 16 beads of courage bowls in the last 2 months. So here again, they last forever. That box of 12, I'll probably lose them, or my grandkids will throw them away when I'm dead. Because just don't use them. But that's just another thought of an easy way to sand from my perspective. And it's like $100.
And anything you can make it easier on sanding is great.
Yeah. And the better you cut, the finer you get your cuts, the better. You don't need the sanding. But that's just something to, another way to think about it. So
Hey, Bill, how long of a charge did you get off of there?
I've used it for 2 days. Typically, my thing is I work in the shop 2 or 3 hours in the morning, go back down in the afternoon, work 2 or 3, 4 more hours, and then I'll put my respirator and my sander on the charger. It's ready to go the next morning, and I'm good to go. So I've never really I've never run a battery down during the day. I'll say that.
Harbor Freight has an angle, now it's corded, but it's very good, for like $30.
Yeah. And here again, I like that.
Mike Pete's pushes that.
Yeah. I like it because it's small.
Yeah.
It gets in
It's
there real
really
easy.
small too.
I've got the angle
Like angle.
grill that I bought from Woodturners Wonders. It works fantastic, but it's corded. It's a little bit bigger and it's heavier. But here again, I don't have any stock in Rikon or anybody else, so not gonna do me any good money wise. I just found that it worked really well for me. Any questions on the inside, what we're doing on the inside? At this point, like I say, the inside, sand it and you're done with the inside. You're ready for finish. And obviously, I'm not taking the time to get a good sand on that. But that's where we would be headed next, would be sanding. And then we're gonna turn the outside. And we're gonna get the outside ready. And you're gonna tend to, as your walls get thinner, you start getting vibration out here, particularly when you're cutting. So you start getting more vibration. Jam chuck, if you will. Here again, that's a old piece of 2x6 that was laying around the workshop. Know where dead center is because I turned it and put the angle on it. And I'm just going to do that, and that's going to help stabilize this so we're not getting any of that vibration. As we start getting truer, it's going to be running a lot truer. So here again, it can be just a quick and easy, without having to go to big expense to help get rid of some of the vibration that you'll get from that loose end out here. And now it's just turn your outside to whatever it is you want it to look like. If you want to do any shaping, anything fancy, this point, first thing I'm trying to do is get the food up good. So we haven't got that vibration we've got in there. It feels like going this way. Sometimes if you're starting to get the vibration, your cut doesn't feel too good, go back in a different direction. The one thing that I do want to caution you on, should have done it before now, and I apologize, do not use a spindle roughing gouge on this, because you've got ingrain on it. If you get a catch with it, that spindle roughing gouge will not be a good thing. Use spindle gouge, bowl gouge. I typically like a bowl gouge because it's just a little heftier, but I would not use a spindle roughing gouge on the inside or outside either one. There's been bad things that happen to good people, and they've used the spindle roughing gouge cutting ingrain. And remember, because that is just cut from a board, you've got ingrain on both sides of it. A little shear straight, if you put them together. Bottom a little bit. That's what was giving me trouble, a little knock right there. A little knocking noise. You kind of get the idea, and once you get your back to your shape, what's your next step? Same thing. A little shear straight will get rid of a little bit more of that. Like if I come back in the other direction with shear straight, might clean up, still a little bit rough. Down the sanding one more time. Questions on where we're at, what we're doing here? The only other thing I would still want to do with this, now that I've done this, is on this flat part for your lid, I typically like to have them tapered in just a little bit so you get a little better fit with the lid. You don't want it high in the center. I mean, this one is pretty flat as it is, but I would come back and just maybe my little spindle gouge. A little bit on the round working. I kind of clean that edge up a little bit. You basically got this ready to be sanded, and then whatever you decide to do, if you decide to do anything, you kind of cover up your glue lines. What I did on this one is I used my beading tool, and since I haven't sanded this one, I'm gonna swap out again. When you go with this one, it's already been sanded, so it's ready for a finishing touch, if you will. I know y'all just love to sit here for an hour and a half and watch me sand, wouldn't you? Well, it should have us running pretty free. And once again, I don't want to get any vibrations out of this, so I'm gonna bring my tailstock back up. And there's multiple different things that you can do, and it's all, you know, your choice. I've done anything from a diamond tool, AKA craftsman screwdriver, that I've just cut to a diamond point on the end, just round 3-point. Just go straight in with it. You get you a nice little V groove there. We can go straight in on our cut line. We can angle it a little bit, taper it, put a little more V to it if you want to. But that's nothing more than a craftsman screwdriver that I put on the grinder. I bought it as a Phillips, so it's already good round, you know, and just made me a nice little point tool with it. On one of those little bowls that I passed around earlier, the little grooves I had on the outside where I had, you know, carved on it, that was done with this. It's just a quick, easy, you know, $5 tool. Or you can go to the D-Way and get one of their bead tools.
Yeah, they're $5, aren't they?
What?
They're $5, aren't they?
No, they're 6. They're a little more expensive. Well, actually they are that 5. They just got an extra 0 on them.
Maybe an extra 2 zeros.
And here again, it's just made for cutting beads. They got them in various sizes. You know, I bought 2 of them, and I bought their little, I think I've heard them call it diamond, I've heard them call it teardrop, but it's a little teardrop. It doesn't, and what you're gonna do with them,
I think you can get their whole set for $350 now.
Yeah.
And I think it's about that.
They're about $60, 65 a piece or something.
When I bought mine, they were 50 a piece, and all I could afford was 3. So I got two beating tools and one of the
I,
teardrops.
I like your Phillips screwdriver, that's a good
The,
idea.
Phillips screwdriver really does work well. In fact,
They just don't, they don't hold their edge as long as the D-ways.
Yeah, but for $60, you can do that.
but for $60, here again, what I'm gonna do on this one, I'm gonna use the Phillips head on the bottom groove, and then I'll put the beads on the top. I'm gonna go back home, and then I'll straighten up and make them all the same when we get home, but here again, it's just. And a little bit on the other side. We got a nice little V groove. That's a pretty quick, easy, like I say, I've got enough thickness on this one where I can go back and redo this. I don't mind doing it both ways. Now on this one, what I'm gonna do is where my glue line, I'm gonna start with one of my points. Right in the glue line. And with this, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna rock it a little bit back and forth. And I'm just gonna watch my cut come in from the bottom. You wanna go right at center line, maybe just a fraction above, and with a little rock. And if you're watching your horizon, you can see your bead forming. Now I'm gonna come back and do the other side with the other tip. Want to add another one in there? And we just put 4 beads in. What I'm gonna do with this is come on this outside groove and just paper that in a little more, just to help define a little bit. And once again, it's gonna be the same thing, just coming in.
That's a teardrop.
That's the teardrop. Teardrop, some people, I think they call it teardrop on their training deal. But that's the shape of it. And to sharpen all of these, it's a CBN stone. But I've had these for about 4 years. And that might be the first time I've ever put a stone on that one. It's, again, you're using them so little, and same thing on this one. It's just using, this happens to be CBN diamond, would be the same thing. You know, and that'll take care of keeping them sharp for you. And you got a lot to wear off before you run out of it. They sell a handle that you can move between the different ones. Quite frankly, I've never found the need for it. If you forget to put this in here and you start doing this, you're gonna wish you had a handle about that long, because it's gonna go absolutely nuts. So make sure you get to the end of it supported when you do that. And that's the same thing for using the little diamond tool. Any questions on this part of the box itself? So we're down, we need to make a lid, don't we? Let's see if we can't get a lid made right quick.
You know, that's a very interesting way to make some sticking in the hole.
Like I say, it is, and like I say, you're not worried about pith, you're not worried about cracking, because it's all kiln ground wood that you're starting off with. And by the time you put a little dressing on it, you can't even see what you've, pieced it together. I've got, well, I guess this is the one that I want to use. Oh, didn't it? It is. That is the one I want to make a top of. And we will pretty much start at the top, just like we did the bottom. Anymore. Well, once again, I've just placed it with, jammed it up against my chuck. I'm going to pull it up a little bit. I'm not worried too much about getting it back. I just want it a little bit better than it was. Bill's bandsaw circles aren't real circles. And then we're gonna go back like we did before. We need to put our mortise on the bottom. And I'm not too concerned right now with the size of the mortise. Well, ultimately, this is going to be the top of the box. So in this mortise, I want to leave enough center so I can have my knob. That will ultimately turn into the knob on the box. Okay, I want to make the mortise just strictly so I can turn it around and put it in the lathe. And since that ultimately is going to be the knob, doesn't matter how deep I make that mortise because I'm gonna cut it deeper anyway. Just give me a little dimple so I know where my center is. And now, once again, I'm going to put another mortise on this end because ultimately I'm going to flip it around and take the rest of the top down to where it will wind up being. Where's the funnel? It should be about right. A little bit larger than that. Now, this mortise here, again, I'm not really concerned about the size of it either. If I want to leave a dimple in the middle of the mortise, because this is going to stay similar to what it is, I can leave it, or I can go ahead and take it away. Now what I've got to do is cut this to fit inside my box. What I'm doing now is just getting an approximate measurement of this. If you've got calipers and want to use calipers, that's fine. The other thing that I found recently, once again, I think it was Rudy Lopez, did I get the name right? Rudy's, when he did his, a 0 center ruler. Never knew there was such a thing as a 0 center, but there's 0 in the middle. This one happens to be metric. On the other side, actually went online, printed it, glued a piece of paper to a piece of wood. You can actually set it here and center yourself up. I am right at not quite 6 millimeters on each side. So I know I go to the center, come back out here, go to the center, come back out here to something a little over 6, and I'll know that's about where I want to start, just to give myself a little room to play. I know if I cut my lip to here, and that's what I'm talking about in a minute, then I can slowly start working it down to the actual size that I want. Whatever lip you want going down in your bowl, take your pick, how deep you want it to sit in there. Not too concerned at this point because I know I am way off. But now I can start creeping up on it. Seeing about where I'm at, okay, I know I got a good bit to go. This is a one more cut game. We all know the game of one more cut, right?
Yeah, right through the bottom.
Well, in this case, you got a rattle top with your tops around. Okay.
Super good picture.
Everybody likes to make the pop tops that are so stiff to pull out. And yeah, they're cool and everything, but here again, in this particular case, it's going to be Jacurge and there's gonna be little kids opening this. So I actually want a loose fitting top, you know? And then here again, depending on who you're making it for, what you're making it for, you know, will tell you how snug the top you want. If you're gonna use it as a kitchen canister or whatever, you want a pretty snug fitting top, keep the moisture out. And I typically, here again, I got the bowl gouge handy. I use my bowl gouge for this. You could use, you know, a skew, you can use your spindle gouge, you know, whatever you decide to do. And it's just a matter of creeping up on it. And unfortunately, it's a stopping start. Getting closer. And we got a pretty, it's not too loose, but it's got a little movement, so it's gonna open. When you put a little finish on it, you're gonna wind up picking it up just a little bit anyway. So now we've got this done, we're ready to take care of making the rest of our top. What I do wanna do is, just because I wanna cut some of the weight out of this, knowing it's going to a little kid, I don't want a whole lot of extra weight. I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of some of this in the middle. It won't be getting rid of a lot, but it'll be getting rid of some of it. Set that there. Now, there's another no-no. And here again, if once you're in here, you decide you want to do any decorating on the inside, and you want, you know, do any kind of, you know, whether you want to put some rings on the inside or whatever, you can go ahead and do whatever you want to now. And at this point, we're pretty much finished with this portion. We could actually go ahead and sand that some if we wanted to. We still need to, and Bill just went and cut our mortise out of there. I need to leave a mortise running my mouth and not paying attention to what I was doing. So let's add us another mortise in here. The good news, we got plenty of wood to do it with, right? Reason we need that mortise, we need some way to hold this while I'm turning the very top of it. Now, here again, a lot of options as how you do this. Don't tell me I was at home. Well, crap. Let's see what we can do to. I could swear I have, but I don't. What I normally have is a little scrap piece of wood and a piece of little rubber backing that I will use my tailstock up against this when I go to do the other, up against the bowl. And this one's got enough meat in the bottom I can redo. So we're gonna back up and cause myself to do a little more work on this when I get home. But what I usually have, like I say, I've got a little wooden disc about this big that's round. I've got a center point in it. And I take a little piece of leather or rubber, lay it in here so I can run my tailstock and hold this in place. It's almost like a little jam truck. Let's see.
You know, I don't know where I got it at, goes in the tailstock, it's got a rubber bushing on it. It was made that way. It worked great for that.
Yeah. That would be great to have too. I probably need to look into
I
it.
don't even have a clue where I got it at.
That's that Chucky, Chucky,
Yeah, one of those
Yeah,
chucks,
Chucky.
I think is what they call that.
Rubber chucky.
So,
rubber Chucky.
but basically, I'm just using this to hold my bowl. That way I can see and define where I want my lid. Damn. Darn. Go ahead and get rid of a lot of this, because I know I'm not going to do it. Yeah, I kind of want to slow down and want to kind of define what kind of shape I want this lid to be. Just be careful when you're doing this, that you don't get down and get into your bowl when you're doing that. You want it rounded, if you want a little flat surface on it, you can do that. You're just using your bowl as your guide as to where you want the end of that to be. I got a little rough edge out here. Yeah, a little old chip in it. It's not too bad. Once you kind of define how you want that top to sit, if you want a little proud like this, you can take it all the way flat, just whatever works for you. Be careful when you're doing this, when you're headed towards that chuck. You don't want to slip or have anything break out and wind up getting the tool into a chuck. I just like to get a little closer to about where I want to head to. That's why you leave a lot of sawdust on the floor when your tool's hit, it protects the edge. Now we can go ahead and reverse it. We're getting a million really screwed up now. I'm looking at the clock thinking I need to hurry up. Didn't get my voice quite big enough. Yeah.
Sure helps showing how much appreciation we have for you guys making all these and donating. They'll put a lot of work into it.
Well, Kevin just brought in 2 more, so I think we're at 24, 25 right now. They wanted 25 to 30 in September, so I'll, have to go to work on a few more. Now I'm just kind of defining and deciding about how I want my top to look, what kind of knob I want to put on the top of it. I use my bowl gouge for a lot, because I feel like I can really kind of get in there and do it with it. But as I start getting closer to what I really want my shape to be, then I'll put it in. And here again, you get to pretty much define your own shape. Take my first. This is just a small bowl gown, 4-inch bowl gown. Again, I don't want to make this one too big, because we know little kids are going to be grabbing it, but yet we want to make sure they've got something they can grab. And some of these kids, in fact, I was talking to somebody yesterday about the Beads of Courage program, and they couldn't understand, well, why are you making those boxes so big? Some of these kids wind up with thousands of these little glass beads. And I'm talking really physically thousands. Go to beadsofcourage.org. Look at some of these kids' pictures in there with all their beads. It'll break your heart. at this point, we're pretty much down to drilling for a bead, sanding, and finishing. And the drilling, I'm sure everybody has probably seen drilling before. I actually bought a drill bit the exact size of the bead, so it makes it a little easier. For a while, I was going with a smaller bit and then slowly creeping up on it, you know, trying to trim it out.
What size is that fit, though?
Well, let's take it off and look at it, because I can't remember the size. Be honest, I've even got a little faint red line that tells me how deep to go too, so. When you're drilling, you want to be around the 400 or 500, you don't want to be, you know, ripping it out there.
You can't get that shaving so hot if you're already playing, so it can get on fire.
Yeah, it'll do that.
And the good set of boards, which is hard to beat a lot of it.
And I've got one of the beads that I put some dental files through for my fitting. Bead goes in there and you're ready to go.
Bill, you were talking about how many beads they get. For the people that don't know, they get a bead for a procedure, is that correct?
Right, they get a bead for every day they go to the doctor. Every day they're in the hospital, they get a bead. They get a bead for every, what they call, Eccleston and the Aflac Center calls a poke, whether that's a blood test, an injection, a shot, whatever, any kind of treatment they get one of these little glass beads for it. And they are stringing them. And just think about, you know, I was talking to this person the other day, and you know, she was asking me, and her granddaughter had actually gone through, had a brain tumor. This was probably 25 years ago. And I don't think Beads of Courage was even functioning back then, so she wasn't part of it. But, you know, I said, okay, so how long was Ava in the hospital? Well, she was in the hospital a little over a year. So that's 365 beads right there. And then, how many times did they come in, do you think, over a year's time? And did she get an injection, you know, chemo, you know, whatever else they do? You know, and you start thinking about it, and Ava was, by all things considered, pretty mild case in some cases. So like I say, when you really think about it, 1,000 beads is a bunch. But think of what that child went through to get that 1,000 beads, you know? So,
Have multiple thousands of beads.
oh yeah, there's, like I say, there are just, you know, if you don't do anything else, go look at the website and just look at a couple of the pictures. There are kids sitting there that look like they're probably 5, 6 years old that have just got, I can't even tell you how many necklaces hanging around down to their feet, probably 15 or 20, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, I must be. I mean, it is just crazy insane what that's all about and what they're doing. So that's why, like I say, to me, it's an important thing. I'm retired. This is what I do. So, but questions, comments, and of course I make other stuff, but at this point, since they've asked for so many boxes, I'm
Beads of Courage, you know, I'm a Mason, and the Shriners, when you see them standing on the side of the road collecting money, they pay for Dickerson Hospital.
Yep.
$1 million a day the Shriners spend on Dickerson. $1 million a day. Remember, money on the side.
yeah, it's unbelievable. So, but in fact, these 25 to 30 boxes that she's asked for this time, unfortunately, they're not going to the kids. They're going to the families that lost a child during the last year. to keep their kids' beads in. So again, it's a big thing. So if anybody would like to start making some, have questions, concerns, whatever, call me. I will do anything I can to try to help you with it. And I'm not trying to say I need for y'all all to go make some, it's up to you, but it's what I consider certainly a worthy cause. Most of my craft sale stuffs that I sell, I wind up spending on boxes to send to them. These 4 that I'm making out of this poplar are probably the cheapest boxes I've ever made for them. A lot of them are the independent segments, which I think a lot of you have seen some of those that I've done. So, a lot more intensive work than these are. Questions? Comments? Well, I hope I shared a little with you that might help you try to dive in. Like I say, don't be scared and think you have to do that whole deep box all at one time. You can do one section at a time if you want to, and then when you get, the 3 sections down to where they want to be, you can just take a scraper or sandpaper and finish out the inside from there. Thank you very much.